Hello, everybody. So we have a very exciting stream planned for tonight. We have finally, it happened a while ago, and I'll have more information about this from the horse's mouth very soon. I'm here with Dragon 1, Kneesnap, and a very special guest who I will now unmute.
Hi guys, how you all doing?
We have Andy Eater,
Ida, yep,
who is I guess one of the developers on Frogger 2. And
indeed.
we also have Kneesnap, and we have Dragon 1.
Hello.
Hello.
And so I don't know. Lots of people who are tuned into this are from the Highway Frogs Discord, and we've kind of been, or at least Kneesnap has been kind of updating everybody on the progress of recovering this massive kind of load of data from Frogger 2 development. And I'm kind of just going to hand this over to him and have him explain kind of like the whole story here.
Sure. Yeah, so about September of last year, I got a bunch of stuff from the Frogger 2's development. And that includes like CDs, N64 cartridges, tons and tons of paper documents, and a tape. And over, well, pretty much since then, I've been working on trying to digitize and preserve it all. And it's finally at a point where it's kind of coming together, and soon still don't have a concrete time frame on this, but within the next couple of months or so, I'd expect a full public release of nearly everything. And so that includes, there are a bunch of pre-release builds, there are prototypes, there's like all the art assets from the game, source code for all the different versions of the game, even source code history, so the individual changes that were made like on any given day. There's really a lot. There's a lot of stuff, and hopefully this stream could be served to showcase some of that. And yeah, when we have Andy here, who might even be able to answer some questions about I guess certain parts. I'm curious, for example, about the spherical worlds early in development.
Okay. Well, I'm here, and if I can answer any questions, I'm certainly more than happy to. So yeah, please feel free to fire questions this way.
And I'm
Great.
going to be playing them and observing them, I guess firsthand, because I've never played any of these, obviously, until now. I don't think anybody's really seen these till now, so I'm kind of the test monkey here. So I guess we'll start with I don't know if you, Kneesnap, know of a specific build that would be good to begin with.
I guess it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you want the earliest builds, those are going to be the N64 ones.
Okay, so like I'm looking to go from kind of like how we did with Frogger 1, kind of like start like early and then just kind of like watch the progression of how the game evolved over time.
Ooh, in that case, let me real quick send you a build that wasn't part of the ones that I specifically have preserved here. This is from a different group.
Okay.
This prototype was actually preserved all the way back in like 2005.
Okay.
But so it's really early, and
earlier than the ones we have.
It's earlier than the ones that were part of the backups that I have here. Let me send it to you.
Is this the one that was previously public that was kind of like going around? Because I've definitely played that in my life. Yeah. Okay.
This, well, there are two. There were two prototypes that were already public. This one here should be the earliest though. We probably don't want to spend a huge amount of time on it because we want to go over like what's new, what's part of the stuff here. But I think this would be good to kind of get a sense of how the game changed over time.
Right. All right. So yeah, this was one that, you know, like you can go download right now. Like it's been on the internet for eons. I have played it.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah, I played it like probably like 10 years ago myself. Like, oh, Frogger 2 was going to be on the N64. Wow, that's cool. Downloads, plays, that type of thing.
I'm feeling very old right now.
Let's see. All right. I'm going to scoot into this. And then I need to set the game capture to be, hopefully.
Yeah, isn't it kind of wild to see something that you worked on at this point, like almost 25 years ago?
It's crazy. Yeah. It brings back so many happy memories, to be honest. But yeah, I was actually the I suppose I was officially the first person on the Frogger 2 team. I turned up it was my first job in the games industry. Turned up day one, 8:30 a.m. in the morning, and found out that I would be leading the Nintendo 64 version of Frogger 2, and there's only myself on the team at that point. And yeah, the what we're looking at there, that prototype from my very own hands. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, on an SN64 development kit connected to a Windows PC. Happy days.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
It never ran that quick on the N64.
Yeah, this is probably not how it ran.
Yeah.
Is there like a frame skip or something that you can reduce the speed?
Can I change the clock speed of the emulator here so it's...
Yeah, you could just make it run in interpreter mode. Oh, it's still too fast.
It's still really fast. N64 emulation never change. Geez, I don't even know. Like I wouldn't even be able to tell you. Like,
I don't think the others have this problem.
Do we know if it'll still run that fast when it's actually in game?
I think it does run faster than it's supposed to.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to change that. That's okay.
Oh, well.
It's still.
We'll take a look at least.
Unfortunately.
Okay. All right. It's
Yeah.
a little quick.
Unfortunately, even with this really old build, it's still after all of the spherical worlds were removed. I think this is one of the first builds after the spherical worlds were removed.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I mean, this is unplayable. I can't even cross the freaking road. Can I like... I mean, I wouldn't even, I don't even know. Yeah.
No.
So here's the beginning of the level in Frogger 2. Oh, I almost made it. This is ridiculous.
I think something really interesting about this one is if you look at the frog, it's clear from the start that's kind of it was kind of inspired by the frog in the first Frogger game, because you can look at it and it's designed a lot differently, but like the orange stripe is there. The way that the model is constructed looks a bit more like the first game.
Yeah, the frog character went through quite a few iterations actually before the finalized version that actually appeared in the final game. Sandro de Cruz, I think, was the guy that built and created the 3D model and animated it, and probably got through about 5 or 6 revisions of the frog before a final design was given the thumbs up.
Yeah, I think the characters in Frogger 2, mainly the playable ones, have a lot of what would be the right word? They have a lot of charm to them. They're very very cartoony, but
Stylized
yeah.
in a very nice way. Okay, well, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to fix this. So
Yeah, I'm
instead,
not sure that that's going to be possible to fix.
I will play this level instead. It doesn't really seem like this level's gonna be much better.
Yeah.
I remember playing this prototype. Jesus, what happened there? I remember playing this prototype at a normal speed, so it might just be the current build of Project 64 is just not optimized for this or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's probably an emulator quirk.
Disable sync game to audio to fix super speed issues. I tried that. It did not seem to fix anything, but I'll try it one more time. Sync using audio. Yeah, no, it's still crazy fast. Anyway, we have like a kind of a city level here. I know the city levels were kind of like a big thing in development, and then they kind of just didn't end up making the final cut.
Yeah, there are a bunch of city levels that were pretty far into development that just didn't make the cut. I think now Andy could probably speak here, but I think what it seems happened to me was that these were some of the earliest levels that were kind of designed, and as development went on, they saw actually some of the ways that they designed the earlier levels maybe weren't as good as as the direction they ended up going, and so they
Yeah.
just didn't end up. Okay.
Yep, that's pretty much true. Yeah, yeah. The docks level that you're seeing there is pretty much the. I'd say that that's probably the first real level, other than the sort of traditional flat Frogger, the original. And in terms of the city levels, I think ultimately that was a decision by Hasbro Interactive, the publisher, who weren't keen on the city idea, which was a bit of a shame, because from what I remember, and as can be probably evidenced in some of the models that we'll probably show in later in this stream or other streams, we had city levels where you had ledges on side of buildings and skyscrapers, that sort of thing, and they were actually quite good fun to play, and quite an enjoyable gameplay experience. But I'm pretty sure it was a decision by Hasbro to knock the city levels on the head, so they never really got any traction and never got developed any further, which I thought was a bit of a shame.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds like, from what I've heard, it sounds like Hasbro liked to say no a lot.
Oh, an awful lot. Yeah, yeah, they did indeed. I think it was also ultimately their decision that put a stop to the spherical worlds, the cylindrical, the donut worlds. We came up with some pretty crazy designs, which have kind of got lost, which are a bit of a shame. But some of the levels were absolutely fantastic. As long as we were able to take a collision map, the grid, the frog, your character jumps around, as long as we could map that reasonably well to some geometric shape, we had it mapped around donuts, had it mapped around capsules, spheres, and hence, we came up with some quite novel level ideas. But unfortunately, again, Hasbro were keen on going down the traditional Frogger route. Hence, they were a lot flatter, more traditional levels that we've come to expect from Frogger.
Were they afraid that people wouldn't recognize it or something?
Well, I think that might have been part of the reason, but I also think another reason is that I think it was Pac-Man Adventures in Time or another Pac-Man game at the time.
Oh, yeah.
I think they were looking to do some sort of crazy level designs, and I mean, I can't prove this, but shortly after the decision was made for us to drop these crazy shaped levels, they appeared in Pac-Man World, which was another game that was being done, by Hasbro, by a different team, Hasbro Interactive, and that didn't go down so well with the development team, to be honest, because they looked a bit too close to the levels we'd designed.
And you guys were
So
probably like, what the heck?
Oof.
yeah, exactly, and it left a bit of a bitter taste, you know.
Oh yeah.
But hey, there we go.
Yeah.
So before I forget, actually, I just saw a question, I think, in the chat box there from, I think it was Ark or Arch, about development issues. What were the biggest development challenges on Frogger 1 and 2? I don't know about Frogger 1 because I wasn't involved on the development. I came in on Frogger 2. But I think the biggest development issues were the fact that we didn't really have much time to develop the game. We had a very small team as well. Also, a very inexperienced team. As I say, it was my first game in the game development industry, and that rang true for quite a few people on the team. So there's a lack of plenty of talent, but a lack of experience. So yeah, not much time, not much experience, and the budget was crazy low at the time as well. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I'm thinking I have a feeling it was only about $250,000 development budget.
Oh
Wow.
wow.
Which okay, you know, it was
Yeah.
20 years ago, but even 20 years ago, that's not a lot of money to develop a game. So it was always backs against the wall. We're always
Jeez.
fighting. It was tough, enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining, but it was tough. It was very tough.
Yeah. I struggle to imagine what it would be like to kind of put myself in the headspace of somebody who was working on Frogger 2.
So
No, it was a nice environment, a really nice environment. So I just want to make it clear, I have no complaints. I'm not complaining whatsoever. I absolutely loved my time, and
Sure.
one of my regrets is leaving Blitz Games, or Interactive Studios as it was at the time. I wish I'd stayed there for a few more years because I had such a good friendship and working friendship and development. There's such a good culture there, you know, a good studio culture. Everyone got on together, worked so well, and a lot of that was down to the fact that Andrew and Philip Oliver, the owners of the company, are so passionate about what they do, and they still are to this very day. And I'm very fortunate that I'm still able to, call them as friends. And I was speaking to Andrew Oliver about 2 weeks ago. He called me up.
Nice.
Yeah, he called me up saying, "I've just been talking to Kneesnap. Sent him a big parcel full of CDs and documents." I said, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah. Yeah,
So
they're really nice.
yeah, great guys. And sadly, game development is a very difficult environment to work and survive in, as you know. A lot of companies simply don't make it and go under. And despite their passion and their talent and experience, it just all got a bit too much in the end, and obviously they had to close studio. But it's interesting talking to them even today, just how passionate they still are.
Yeah, I really get that talking to them too. It feels like they really care about this stuff.
Absolutely. It was a bit of a strange situation back in the sort of late 90s when I started there, because I appreciate you guys are quite a bit younger than myself, but for me, the Oliver twins are sort of my idols, because they were very much, like, along with Codemasters, very much responsible for kicking off games as we know it, modern computer games. And to be able to sort of turn up and go and work for these guys that I idolized, it was quite a strange situation to be in.
Mm.
But yeah, so welcoming. that fit straight into the team. Great times, and yeah, absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved working there.
It's kind of surprising to me to hear that the Frogger 2 team was I don't want to say entirely amateur, but it was your first game and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I found the game when I played it when I was younger, a very polished experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, good. It's very kind, thank you. Yeah, we had a lot of the art team were new to the games industry as well, because at the time that Frogger 2 was in its early development, there were quite a few projects going on. Splits Games had, I think there were about 4 or 5 internal teams within the studio. Some were working on getting Glover to gold, ready for the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation releases. Some guys were working on some other Nintendo 64 prototypes, Dragon Sword. Another team was working on getting war games out on PlayStation. So a lot of the experienced team members were already allocated on different teams. Hence, Frogger 2 was kind of being the new project. There wasn't much in the term of experience resource to assign to it. Hence why, we were all pretty green in terms of, certainly in those early days, early to mid development on Frogger 2. But I think it turned out all right.
Arch asks if you remember any of the tools and programs used to develop Frogger 2.
Yeah. We developed on Windows desktop PCs, regardless of the target platform. But obviously for PlayStation, we had PlayStation SN Systems PlayStation Dev Kit. We had an SN64 SN Systems Nintendo 64 Dev Kit. We had the PlayStation dev kits from Sony Cambridge, which was those early
Wait,
those
what?
early the very early PlayStation dev kits. They were so early at the time that they were basically if you imagine an old open desktop PC chassis with wires everywhere, it was basically just a box of wires, and it was so noisy. I remember it being so noisy that we actually had to drill a hole through the wall to feed wires through a wall into the next room, so the box could be put in the next room out of the studio because it was making too much noise. Yeah,
And
yeah.
you said these came from Sony Cambridge?
We got our dev kits from Sony Cambridge originally. Yeah.
Interesting. That's the development studio for the first Frogger game. For those who aren't aware.
Yeah, that's. I think I can't 100% say for sure, but I have a feeling that when dev kits were released to dev studios, I have a feeling that Sony Cambridge were effectively the UK hub from where they were distributed out to other development houses. Hence, that's where ours came from. I'm pretty sure it was Sony Cambridge. Yeah.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see you trying to load all these levels, Hellfire. I am aware of the levels that are on this. I do think that the only 2 that are available are the ones that are playable.
Okay, yeah. So this whole menu doesn't work. Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
That's why I tried it twice and I was like, yeah, no, I don't think that's actually going to do anything.
Sorry to interrupt you there, my friend. Some of those levels that are on there and some of the content that you're looking at from the menus, they are dependent on a connection to a dev kit, because some of it was pulled in on the fly from the dev kit.
I see.
So that's why some of the levels will not actually work, unfortunately.
Oh, it's because it's coded specifically to pull them from a remote location that it can't, which is why the emulator crashes.
Yes, sir. Absolutely correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
I assume similar for the object viewer too, because the textures aren't really loading there. I don't know if that's, and also your playpen that you have here.
Yeah,
whatever
that was massively cut down. Yeah, there's quite a bit missing out of that. Yeah.
I think we should move on to whatever the next one is. So I
I
guess
think
that's
so too.
that is, I assume, this.
Yeah.
Okay.
This next one right here, it's going to be very similar to a prototype that was released in 2019. And the one that was released in 2019 is quote unquote milestone 4, and the only difference that I'm aware of between these two builds is that this one does not have the debug menu in it that lets you do all sorts of cool stuff in it. So this one is just a single level, which makes it pretty quick to show.
I'm going to oops, I want to get rid of this and that, and then just put the game in front there. Perfect. So we got one level. Are there any specific any challenges specific to Frogger 2 that wouldn't have been experienced today? Says Paradox Multimedia.
Oh, any challenges specific to Frogger 2? Good question. I suppose there were quite a few challenges with Frogger 2, but I think that applied to quite a few games that were developed 25 years ago. It was so difficult back then. Nowadays we are very much spoiled by 8, 16, 32 gigs of RAM, GPUs. Back then we had to worry about every polygon budgets, every bit, fight for every bit and byte. It was very difficult to try and get the most out of the hardware. So I'd say that some of the challenges for Frogger 2 were trying to get the content that we wanted in there, actually getting it compressed and small enough to actually fit on the target platform. I remember one of the big issues was with the PlayStation version, where we ended up having to rewrite the maths library. We had such terrible performance. The PlayStation version it wasn't even a frame a second. It was shocking, terrible performance, sub 1 frame per second at one point. So we had to rewrite the maths library to use something called fixed point math, which uses integer math. I'm sure that some of you guys are familiar with it. Because back 25 years ago, the hardware at the time just didn't have the floating point performance capability that we have nowadays.
Right.
And we were kind of relying on it. And yeah, the N64 wasn't too bad. The PC wasn't too bad, could cope with it fine. But yeah, obviously the PlayStation is just not well suited. So yeah, we ended up having to rewrite the maths library a couple of times. Not a big issue, but obviously it was more time consumed in doing that and less time spent on the game debugging and whatnot. So yeah, I'd say that was probably one of the challenges, actually getting it working on what by today's standards on what was very limited hardware. I can't remember what the polygon budgets were, but I have a feeling it might have been something like 4,500 polygons for the PlayStation level, including all level assets and the game characters. It was a silly low number of polygons.
For the oops, sorry.
No, go on, please go on.
Okay. For the non-programmers here, when Andy says that they had to use fixed point math, what that kind of means is that normally you or at least on today's systems, you get to use either kind of numbers that don't have decimal points or numbers where they do have decimal points. But on the PlayStation, the way that that they had to write their code was to basically without decimal points. This is a massive oversimplification. Of course, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but they had to rewrite it so that they were using numbers that were just fixed without decimal points, as if they had decimal points. So they would use part of the bits that comprise the number differently than how we'd use them today.
I'm seeing an unfamiliar baby frog animation in the lower right.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I was thinking about how, like, the final game uses the same ones from Frogger 1, but then this one uses a totally different one.
Yeah, we're gonna see. This actually changed a lot in the different prototypes. Is that they really couldn't settle on a on what the baby froglet icons would look like. It's kind of interesting how in the end they just finally settled on that on what was from the first game.
So something I noticed about that level that felt really, I don't know, something about it felt, I don't know, like it felt a lot, not, I wouldn't say clunkier. It felt a lot more, maybe it's just because the camera was way more zoomed into Frogger. It felt like, I don't know, different. It felt very different from what I'm used to. Like, at least, like, the other one that we just played, even that felt a little closer to the final. I think that they were kind of, like, it seemed like they were kind of experimenting with, like, how the game feels here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, yeah. The lead programmer on the game and the lead on the PC version was a guy, Matt Cloy, and he spent quite a lot of time experimenting with camera positions and with camera easing, sort of easing between positions as the player moves and as the camera rotates. And on this demo that we're playing through, the prototype playing through there, I have a feeling that there might not actually be any easing of camera positions in it. Hence, it's very, very staccato, very clunky feeling, which obviously you've picked up on, and you're absolutely right. We went through several iterations of camera movement and different schemes to try and get a nice feel. A feel that where the camera wasn't too quick, it wasn't too slow. But on this one, yeah, it's very kind of staccato. I think that the animation of the frog doesn't help as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the animation.
The visual look
sure.
of it certainly doesn't help either.
Yeah, because the animations of the final build for the frogs was really snappy.
Yeah,
Like, it's almost like Frogger was teleporting around almost, but the camera was like just gliding really smoothly over the play area.
yeah. As the frog's moving around and jumping from grid position to grid position, you can see animations. You'll suddenly just rotate for a frame or two through 90 degrees, and yeah, there's quite a few issues.
You moved through the wall back there. Was there any particular key combination you used to do that?
Well, I'm pressing R, and it's kind of going through all of the movable spots he can go in, is what I'm noticing.
I see. I thought there was kind of a smooth one where he kind of just moved as if you had activated some kind of free movement mode.
No. I'm just pressing the right trigger a bunch of times and it's doing this. And now I'm dead. I like the health is an interesting concept. The fact you can just get hit and kind of flicker a little there.
Yeah.
Well, he's a really big frog, so yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought it's been kind of funny the scale of Frogger is like he's the same size as a car. Like what does that mean?
Something weird has occurred. Oh, the game is like crawling down to a halt. Something weird's happening.
Well, we get to see the PSX performance mid-development.
There we go.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think we're a little behind on questions here. What I see is from Paradox, they ask if Swampy was as a villain was always a part of the story, and if story had much of an effect on the overall production direction.
Swampy was Swampy was always going to be the villain in the game, but the story didn't quite pan out how the team originally envisaged it. The game originally, when we designed the game originally, we had ideas for boss levels where you'd go through, for example, you go through 2 or 3 garden levels as seen in the final game, then you'd suddenly come across a boss, and we had ideas where you'd actually take on some huge boss, and you would perhaps have to use your tongue to whip out, hit his legs, that sort of thing, to try and take out the boss. But obviously those that never saw the light of day either, unfortunately, and the story got changed quite dramatically. And in the end, it was quite late on in development when the story got finalized, and the story's pretty poor. Let's be honest. It's not great. It's about the story's about as good as the cutscenes, or the quality of the FMV cutscenes. It's
I'm
not
gonna
great.
be honest. I think that's one of my favorite parts about the game, to be honest.
But it's part of the charm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they were.
There wasn't much. There wasn't much thought gone into the story in the end, because it got messed around, it got chopped and changed. Ideas such as the spherical levels, the ideas for boss levels, that changed so much that obviously it affected the story as well, and what we could do in terms of a story. So it was kind of pieced together, and it was very, very, very thin at the end. The story, it was pretty poor. I don't think there's anyone on the team that was particularly happy with the story, but it was a case of, look guys, we've got a month or 2 before we've got to get the alpha and beta version out, so let's get a story in and quickly. Oh yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but hey, there we go.
I gotta say, you call them poor. I call them memorable.
Memorable.
Yeah.
I like it.
Memorable is a good word. They
one's
definitely
really forgotten the storyline.
Well, I think the cutscenes especially are something that's stuck in my brain. I couldn't tell you the story beats personally, but like the stylization of the cutscenes and the way that they're animated is certainly good in the sense that it was memorable.
Yeah. Originally, the plan was to have Sandro, the guy that was responsible for the main character animations and the character design, character building. We were originally going to have the cutscenes run in engine, and then that got changed to FMV sequences.
Interesting.
And Sandro was going to be responsible for doing the FMV, but because we were so busy trying to get the content and pull the game together, we basically didn't have the time or the resource, so they were outsourced to an external company, and there were a few issues.
Yeah, a few issues.
Yeah, I think Kneesnap. Yeah, I think Knee's pretty familiar, having read some of the background documents. There were a few issues with the studio that actually produced the cutscenes and the FMV. So it wasn't a great quality, as you say, memorable, but hope not for the right well, maybe for the right reasons. Yeah, as you say, you're not going to forget them.
Yeah, this build that Hellfire is looking at right now is quite a bit later than the last one. It's in fact it's starting to resemble the what the final game looks like a little bit more.
The frame rate is awful.
And the frame rate isn't super great on this level. And this build, it contains a lot more levels than the last one. The last one only contained 1. This one contains I don't have an exact number offhand, but it's a lot more. And before I forget, Chunkinator asked mentioned how the sound effects remind him of Glover, especially
Glover,
when you
yeah,
get a baby
yeah.
frog. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the early development code, with it originally being developed on the Nintendo 64, and Glover being developed and led on the Nintendo 64, there was a lot of shared code and assets to quickly, just so we could get a project up and running quickly. And so a lot of the Glover sound effects are in Frogger prototypes and probably other games as well. You probably might hear them in quite a few other games and prototypes because they got shared around different teams and different games. So yeah, there will be crossover with Glover and things like that. Other games, yeah, definitely. Well spotted. I just saw a question as well about the 3D software being used. It was the software was 3D Studio Max. Certainly on Frogger. Well, it was 3D Studio Max across the entire studio on pretty much all the games. In terms of Frogger 2 specifically, it was version 2.5 3D Studio Max up until I think around about mid to late 1999, at which point version 3 came out, and the art team upgraded to 3D Studio Max version 3 and 3.1. But yeah, it was I think it's Autodesk, isn't it? 3D Studio Max.
Yeah, Autodesk.
Yeah, yeah. I think shortly after, I think some of the guys moved on to Maya. I think it was Maya that came out around that time. But certainly for Frogger 2 and the games that were being developed by Blitz at the time, yeah, it would have been 3D Studio Max, along with custom written plugins for import and export, for outputting to the various in-house developed tools for creating texture banks, that sort of thing.
I'd like to add that that we have copies of those plugins and even the source code of those plugins. So
I might need to grab a copy of those.
Sure. Yeah. So we have all of the tools that were used to make Frogger 2, and that also includes Job, which is which was used, I think, by the artists to texture. Yeah, texture parts of levels and stuff.
Yeah, Job was a really nice tool, actually. What would happen? You'd have the 3D art team would create the levels using 3D Studio Max. They would create the collision grid, the collision map, in 3D Studio, and then they could be exported to this OBE format, which was loaded by Job. And what Job allowed the team to do was easily edit textures, swap textures, apply shading, the GRU shading to sort of simulate lighting effects, provide texture tiling to waterfalls, that sort of thing. And what it did, it meant that for level designers who weren't particularly skilled in using 3D Studio Max, it meant they could get their hands on the level and go in and actually start tweaking textures without having to have 3D Studio Max skills. And it even allowed programmers like myself to go in, play around with levels, nice, easy, quick, without having to worry about figuring out how to learn and use 3D Studio Max. And it was a very powerful tool, to be honest. And yeah, if it hadn't been for Job, I don't think Frogger 2 would have ever actually made it out the door in time. It was really useful, really useful tool. Used on other games as well, not just Frogger 2. It was used on other games as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, I found Job to be a lot nicer to use than 3D Studio Max. I can barely use 3D Studio Max, but Job is just you open the file and you set the place where the textures are, and it just kind of works, even on modern hardware. At least for me.
Yeah.
I know you've had issues running it though.
Yeah, I struggle on for some reason, but it's so nice. You can just bring in the level, and you select your geometry. You can apply shading to it, get some nice blending, and yeah, it's really nice. Rotate textures on the fly, and it's so much easier than having to learn 3D Studio Max. Definitely, such a very nice tool to use.
I missed which build we're on currently.
So this
We
is
are on the one that's near December 1999. In fact, this is almost the end of the N64 version, just 2 weeks before the final N64 build.
so because we're kind of approaching that topic, I did want to ask Andy here, like, what from your perspective, what was up with the Nintendo 64 version and why it never really came to light?
Money. It came down to money and the cost of development. The cost of producing the cartridges for the Nintendo 64. It was unfortunate, but at the time that Frogger 2 was getting towards its mid-development stages, there was the N64 had started to become a very expensive console to own. I'm not sure how much things cost over with you, how much games cost in the States, but certainly over here in the UK, we were seeing N64 games going up in price 30, 40, 50%. And we were looking at $70, $80 for a game, whereas they'd been sort of $35, $40 prior. And so what would happen was that Hasbro Interactive were getting a bit nervous, because what you have to remember, at the end of the day, Hasbro, as the publisher, they're effectively the guys that are taking the risk. They provide the money and the finance to the developer to develop the game. And they're also, they're footing the costs for 100,000 cartridges to be made and with the game on, ready for distribution. The problem is the cartridges were, I can't remember the exact figures, but let's say the cartridges were $10 a piece to make by the time you got the raw materials, the plastic, the circuitry, what have you. And that's quite expensive. And if the game failed and you're left with a warehouse full of 100,000 N64 cartridges, that's an awful lot of money to lose.
Right.
And then, of course, the PlayStation was just coming into existence, which used optical media, which obviously the CD. CD was cheap as chips, whereas a Nintendo 64 cartridge would cost several dollars per unit to produce a game on. You could, for a few cents, get a game copied onto a CD, for literally for a few cents. So it was a hell of a lot cheaper to mass produce 100,000 CDs with a game on compared to 100,000 cartridges. And so yeah, unfortunately, it was the cost which ultimately led to the N64's downfall. It's simply development costs, cartridge costs.
If I recall,
that's why it got cancelled.
I think the twins mentioned a very specific event with Hasbro where Glover they ordered like double the amount of cartridges that Interactive Studios had recommended they order, and they had a loss because they ordered too many, and that played a big role in their ultimate decision. I don't I could be remembering that wrong. I think that's what the twins
you're
said.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. They didn't want to get stung again, end up in the same situation, because the problem there obviously costs a lot of money, and that means that it's less money for the development studio. So yeah, that's what it was. That's exactly what happened, Nee. You're absolutely right. either got stung, ordered too many, didn't sell, and yeah, left with a big warehouse full of very expensive cartridges that they couldn't shift.
Yikes.
Yeah, yeah.
Albert asks what a DRM the PC version has. I have, having looked through the source code, I think the only DRM that was in play was that the game checked if there was a drive called Frogger 2. So like if you had a CD inserted, the CD would be named Frogger 2. I believe that's the only thing it does.
I can't remember any clever DRM or anything in there, to be honest. I think that's pretty much it, yeah.
Checking the drive and seeing if it's called Frogger 2 is kind of clever. But also,
yeah,
like,
I'm not even
you
sure
could
that
just-
it was a DRM check, to be perfectly honest. I think it might have just done that so that it knew which drive to try and like load the video files off of. And it would just say, if that wasn't there, it would say, oh, well, please insert the disk, because we can't load the video files.
water stuff. I like water.
Yeah, unfortunately, that menu doesn't seem to do anything on this build. I think it was changed to do something in shortly after this build. Yeah, I'm still working on getting the getting closer to that final N64 version, because I'm trying to compile it from the source code, because we have this one which is 2 weeks before the final N64 changes, but it's there's some cool things that change between them that I'm currently trying to figure out if we can preview in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame the what stuff option doesn't work there, because if I remember, it was a long time ago, but if I remember right, it was a we were actually messing around and experimenting with simple spring mass water systems. So the water was an actual mesh, and, and if you dropped something in, it would effectively cause realistic ripples, and it looked pretty cool. And I think that's what that option, it brought up a simple demo with a mass spring water system with realistic ripples. But ultimately, as I say, going back to the platforms of the time, the Nintendo and the PlayStation, they weren't really powerful enough to deal with the physics needed.
If we can get that option to work at some point, I can compile it right now. I have something that does compile, even if it crashes if you try to jump. But but we'll get to see that eventually, I think.
I have to real quick make sure that actually, more specifically, I need to turn on the PlayStation audio for me because it's really loud. There we go. Turn that up a little. Okay. Cool. So this is the first PlayStation build that we currently have here.
Yeah, I don't think we have any of the builds that were running at like a frame a second. I assume that those builds were deemed so bad that they weren't even worth keeping around. That's a total speculation on my part, though.
Guess hitting start game is probably a good place to start. Maybe. Maybe not.
Yeah, I think hitting start game will do something. Is your controller set up?
It is. Yep. Well, I was able to just navigate the menu, and I hit start. Now I can't navigate the menu. So let me reset. Okay, so this all works. I'll go to level select. I'll try that. So what are these numbers after?
I believe those numbers are the percentage complete. Yeah.
Interesting. So the ones that have zeros probably won't load anything at all.
Probably. Something that might help determine if there's been a crash or not is if you make the debug console show up, the game is printing stuff to it. But that's okay. You're in game right now, so.
Can I rotate the camera in this version?
I don't think you can rotate the camera. Oh, yeah. Okay, never mind.
Only with R1. Oh, R1 and R2, which is a little weird.
Interesting control choice.
There's no sound either.
But yeah, we can see that that while the game is clearly not running at a frame per second, it's still really really a lot slower than you need it to be.
Yeah, very much so.
And that's even with all of the rendering issues where stuff is just disappearing.
Somebody asked a question for Andy. If you're still a dev today, is there anything you miss from the older days of game development?
Well, yeah, I'm still a dev today. Yeah, still big difference, I suppose, now is that I'm my own boss now. I'm lucky enough to have my own software development business, but I still work in 3D graphics programming, do that sort of thing. So I'm still doing a lot of similar work that I used to do when I worked in the games industry. I still love it as much as I did back then. I absolutely love programming, love coding. I'll be honest with you though, guys. The pay is not great in the games industry. Certainly not in the UK. It certainly wasn't back 2 decades ago. But I think if the games industry paid sort of on a level par with other industries, then you know, I'd love to get back into game development because it's something that I do miss. You get to work with some incredibly talented people, and the challenges that you face every day. That you know that's it's a real buzz, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that whilst coding is obviously a very technical discipline, it's also very creative. You very often have to come up with novel ideas and solutions to things that you might have not done before, or things that haven't got a solution. So yeah, I do, and that's why I still enjoy it. I still enjoy coding and development today. It's it's the buzz, it's a challenge, and I can't ever see myself changing, to be honest. I think I'll be developing until I retire, and then probably beyond that as well. Yeah, definitely.
And I was gonna say, you probably will still want to continue doing that even after you retire.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like
yeah,
like a lifestyle,
so.
at that point.
It is, entrance, yeah.
Sorry, I gotta interrupt. The entrance to the secret area. Don't collect the. Okay, that's okay.
Oh.
I was gonna tell you where it was because it's super easy to miss that entrance. It's one of the ones that the lawnmower comes out of.
I tried going in all of them and none of them worked.
No, right at the end. So right before the pond, they're like, it's where the lawnmowers are, like there are 3 rows of them. It's like the middle one to the right. That's okay. No, I'll end my interjection here.
That's funny.
I better add that to the bug list. I've never seen that one before.
R7 asks, now that we have the full N64 source code, is it possible to resume and fully complete the development of the N64 version? Just like the unreleased Net Your Rose Magic Castle game? Yes, it is possible. It's not going to be super easy, though. This is something that I hope to do at some point, actually, is to kind of look at finishing the N64 version. The big trouble with it is that a lot of the code that existed isn't fully usable to finish it. And the reason for this is Andy mentioned before the conversion to fixed point math instead of floating point math. When they switched away from the N64 version, they completely stopped using the floating point math code. And because the N64 version, you wanted to use the floating point math, and on the PlayStation version, you didn't. And the PC port could do either. And so they kind of had two versions of the code. One was the fixed point, one was the floating point. Before when they had both versions of the game. And because they dropped the N64 version, they also decided to drop the floating point math code. And so so all versions of the game, the PC version, PlayStation, and Dreamcast, they're all using fixed point, which is fine. The N64 can also do fixed point. The problem is when you start to get to reusing the code that was already written for Frogger 2, because all the code that was written for the N64 version was relied upon fixed floating point. Sorry, and so in order to finish it, it will it requires dealing with rewriting all of that code. But I do hope that we are able to one day finish the N64 part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are definitely a few challenges there with getting it working, but I think, as you said, Nee, I think all the tools and everything that's needed is probably there, or enough of it is there for it to happen. But yeah, it's certainly not trivial. There's quite a few challenges to it. But I'd love to see a Nintendo 64 version up and running, to be honest. It'd be absolutely fantastic.
It certainly helps that we do still have all the tools, and we have the code for I think we have the code for all of those tools too. So bonus points if you add in the water ripples like Andy mentioned. How would the music be handled for the finished N64 version, sequenced with instrument samples? Yeah, that I've thought a bit about this. It depends. So the easiest option would just be to add like just your normal just add the sample of the entire track basically. So just like put in the raw like PCM data or something.
What the game does now,
and that would
right?
be easy, but it would take up too much space on the cartridge. The amount of space necessary would be too much. We could like tinker with the quality settings and maybe something that would be acceptable. The other option is sequenced music with the sampled instruments, and that's that might be a route that we'd go, but there is a trouble with that, and it's that I don't know the music. Well, we do have the music project files, so we could try to do that. I don't know how we deal with all of the kinds of plugins that they were using in Acid and Cubase and all the different software they were using. I don't know how effective it would be to accurately recreate the music there through sequencing. Yeah, it's there are definitely trade-offs because they dropped designing things with the N64 in mind when they dropped the N64 version. So some trade-off would need to be made. I hope I'm not rambling too much.
No.
I got a quick question for Andy. I noticed like from playing Frogger 1 and then moving to Frogger 2, when it came to death animations for Frogger, in Frogger 1 they couldn't really show it off as much as you could in Frogger 2. I'm noticing, I don't know what year in development or what month in development we are right now, but as for the latest build of the game, you kind of have this like pseudo cartoony kind of gore thing going on. Like Frogger will get cut in half or he'll explode.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you were ever butting heads with anybody about like what rating the game was going to have because of those.
There were issues with even the cartoon or comic book gore. Yeah, it made people nervous, especially at Hasbro, just because it's very much a game for obviously all ages. It had to be a bit careful. I think is it the Halloween levels where you can get the frog sliced in half with an axe, or I
Yeah, there's like
can't
a
remember
swinging
now, but
axe. I remember that.
yeah, there were issues because some of you guys will probably remember this. They've even sort of in the last few years, certain games, well, maybe not the last few years, but certainly maybe 10 years ago, some countries insist, for example, you have green blood. They don't like the fact that it's red. And there were a lot of those issues back then as well. So the gore level, if you like, had to be tempered and reined back in. And a lot of the death animations, whilst we thought they were quite funny, sort of getting absolutely minced and chopped to bits by rotating lawnmower blades. Yeah, it didn't go down quite so well, unfortunately, with the publisher. So a lot of them had to be reined back in.
So there were region differences in that regard.
They would have presented problems insofar that we probably would have had to do different animation sets for different regions. Hence, we tried to settle on a set of animations that would satisfy, any territory, any region, rather than having to go down the route of custom sets for different regions. Hence, a lot of the gorier animations were removed, unfortunately, for the final game.
But we may still have those potentially.
Yeah, I'd expect some of them might well be in these prototypes, definitely.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I think the final game had a lot of those animations. At least the US one. I don't know about.
Yeah, I think that Frogger still gets chopped up, doesn't he, in places?
Yeah.
But I think we just toned back on the. Well, I know we did because I took them out myself.
Sure.
I was spawning clouds of red particles, for blood splats and things like that,
Oh, geez.
and blood clouds. So yeah, it was kind of a bit of fun, a little bit of fun as well. So yeah, obviously it didn't really make it in, but it kind of makes sense. It was a bit OTT, really. I wonder if they're in any of the prototypes, actually.
They might be. That
Might
sounds
be,
vaguely
might be.
familiar. I can't
Might
remember if
be.
there's a particular one.
Hmm.
I see you've been kind of digging around in some of the files, Hellfire. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to ask or anything?
I was just kind of looking to see if there's some sort of way I can determine what levels, because I'm seeing these percentages of how complete they are, but despite them saying like 50%, they're not loading, probably because like what Andy said, like they're hooked up to like some sort of remote thing where it's loading, where it should have been loading the data from. I'm just trying to figure out what's actually in the game for me to play, because I keep running into this, like I go to level select and then it just crashes.
The simplest option that I found is just having a save state on the level select screen and just going through the list. Because yeah, it is pretty inconsistent, and sometimes a level that you don't expect to load will load perfectly fine. Sometimes that.
Yeah, like I wasn't expecting that one to load, but I guess it did. So what's the is this version kind of similar to the N64 one in that it was hooked up to some sort of external repository, or is that just the N64 version?
I honestly can't remember with the this version. I can't remember. I won't lie, I can't remember. I know that the N64 version was largely because the amount of available storage on the dev cart, the prototype cart, was obviously quite limited. Hence why some of it was pulled in on the fly. Hence why a lot of the content on that prototype doesn't work on the N64. But in terms of this particular version, I would have thought that those levels with the percentages above 0, I would have thought they'd at least work, to be honest, because I would have thought the content would be there.
Well, it's
So,
interesting because some of them say like 30 or like 50%, and they just don't even work at all.
They just don't work. Yeah, yeah. No, I can't remember, my friend, I'm afraid.
That is okay, because there's still a bunch that do work, and I'm sure we'll see some in another version eventually.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to me, like the level designs were like nailed down. Like this is still, I mean, I don't consider this a super early version of the game, but I mean, like this feels pretty close to what the final game was. I mean, it's not anything drastic like we were seeing with Frogger 1. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know. I've seen enough of these level designs. I think there are some pretty drastic changes. I mean, just think about the spherical worlds. That's like not just differences of what the levels look like. That's completely different construction of how gameplay would work.
true.
Mm-hmm.
True.
These particles are. I don't know how you got there.
Yeah, I don't
It
know how I
seems
got here. either.
the smoke grenade feature did not make it to the final build.
Yeah. Yeah, I really wish the spherical worlds because we have even if we don't have a playable version of the game with the spherical worlds, but which I think is a big shame. We do have 3D models of the spherical worlds. Unfortunately, they're untextured, but it's still cool enough to be able to see what the models look like. They're very and there are a couple of renders of them too, so it's not like we don't have any idea of what the texturing would have looked like. But
I'm still hoping that at some point, as we sort of continue working with the Frogger 2 code that we've got, I'm hoping that we might be able to take those levels, repurpose them, and actually get simple working versions of them. It will cause issues with the camera system due to the normals, the perpendicular normals to the surfaces that the Frogger is jumping around on. But even if we just can get them in and semi-playable, I think that'd be pretty cool. And I don't see why that wouldn't be achievable at some
I
point
think that
in the
is
future.
achievable.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Actually, you just made me realize something. We do have texture data. For it'll be really annoying to get this data into a usable state, but the hashes of the texture names should technically be in some of the backups for the spherical worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, of course, whether or not we have those textures, I still don't know. But if we're lucky, maybe they're in like Glover or something. Maybe they came straight from Glover. But assuming we have those textures, and we should have the hashes for their name unless the format changed. So maybe we could still figure out which textures go to which things.
I don't think the format changed. So yeah, hopefully that information is there. We just need to tease it out from wherever it's sitting. So yeah.
No dice on most of these levels. Just super retro.
You might have better luck with a later version, because I think at this point they were still probably focusing more on the performance of the PlayStation version
Porting
rather
it
than
from the Nintendo 64. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut that down, and then I'll do. This is about a month later.
Oh, look at that.
Okay.
Now they've labeled them as not used.
Interesting.
That's handy.
Not used. Not used.
Low.
Oh.
I'm not sure. It's supposed to say loading there, so I assume
Low.
the graphic got cut off or something.
Still no sound.
And now the turtles are facing the wrong way.
I have a feeling that I was responsible for those awful yellow star effects when you collect the coins, and yeah,
Oh,
a bit of a programmer out there. There we go.
Love it.
look at how tiny the froglets are. They're like a tiny speck.
A bit of a scaling issue there.
Baby frogs, quite literally.
Yeah, no, they're being accurate to the real size of a I guess a tadpole. Yeah, wait, isn't that kind of weird how we're always like saving baby frogs, but in reality, baby frogs are tadpoles.
Where's
I'm
the?
sure there's like slightly smaller sized frogs.
Oops. Where's the secret? Is it?
I believe it was the middle one to the right. That was right. Where you were.
Did they move it in the final game to one of these other ones?
Yes.
Okay, that's why my brain
I think.
can't remember.
Oh, that's weird. It didn't.
Oh,
But
that is totally true, Rayman fan.
They have tadpole tails in Frogger 2. Yeah, I guess they do. Programmer art. Did any of Andy's programmer art make it in the final build?
Hell no. I don't think so.
And Andy's actually a really good artist, though. So.
Thank you. I do have my face textured in a different game, though. I did manage to get my face into a different game a few years later. So
your face
immortalized in a video game, yeah.
Yeah. Your face was almost in Frogger 2. If you had been there on the day of the team photo, you could add your face in there.
Oh yeah, where'd that show up? I feel like I remember seeing that.
I remember seeing that too.
There's a menu on the main menu area that I forget what that menu is, but there is an artwork viewer. Maybe you unlock it by
beating the game,
getting all the coins in the level. I forget what exactly unlocks it.
No,
but yeah, there's a gallery.
What you get for getting all the coins is feeding frenzy mode, I think.
And
right?
you also unlock retro levels, I think.
Feeding frenzy mode, I remember when I unlocked that as a kid, that blew my mind. That you could just eat random things in the level.
Feeding frenzy is pretty awesome.
Honestly, like that added a whole like another level of gameplay for me, because I was just like, oh, what well, okay, if I could eat like anything that moves, what exactly does that entail? And I would just kind of go through the levels and try to eat everything. Very fun.
Yeah, they knew they struck gold with that, because they highlighted it in one of the advertising videos that you could do that.
I don't remember any of the other things you unlocked in that menu, but I do remember that one because I just remember having so many hours of fun with that.
Who made the textures for the game? Like a lot of these don't look like they came from a texture CD.
No, most of the textures were created by Alex Rigby, the texture artist on the game. I can't remember what he used. Is it something Natural Painter or whatever it was called? It was an old package. I have no idea what it's called nowadays.
I should know what it's called.
But he had his tablet, his stylus, and it simulated watercolor and pressure sensitive. So he got this really nice feel to the texture sets, and he was just banging out all these textures for the different themed worlds, and pretty much every single one. Well, certainly a large percentage of the texture sets were done in house specifically for the game by Alex.
Paint Shop Pro.
Paint Shop Pro was used as a viewer. It was as good as a viewer.
Okay.
But I can't remember what the actual software was called now. I'll have to give him a call and ask him. He's retired now, I think. He went on and he's done very well for himself as Alex with his business partner. So he's done really well. Very successful games development business, and retired early.
Congrats to him.
Yeah, sold their business to Warner Brothers for $1.2 billion.
Oh,
2 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So fair play to him. He's done well. Nice guy. Can you remember? Off on a bit of a tangent here, but can you remember games like Farmville on Facebook, things like that?
Yes.
Yeah, responsible for quite a few of those sort of games.
Oh man.
And which did quite well.
Well, now I know who to blame.
You might be wondering, why am I playing this whole level again? And it's because I want to test the progression, because I hit start game, and I want to see what happens if you actually beat the level.
Yeah, let's see.
If it takes me to the next quote-unquote level.
Or it'll crash.
Or it'll crash, yeah, probably crash.
Just kidding. I don't know what it'll do.
Can you take hits in the final game, or do you just die immediately? I don't remember.
You just die immediately. I think there might be one situation where that might be not the case. I don't know, though. Okay, so it just kicks you back to the level select screen.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one, because I don't think there's much else in this. I've kind of been playing these silently while you guys have been talking about other things, because I think that's way more interesting than me being like, oh, wow, this is different. Like, obviously, you know?
Sure. I think the questions are slowing down a little, so maybe we could do a little more. Oh, this is different, but yeah, I agree that the discussions are. I think it's really interesting.
Well,
glad to have you here, Andy. By the way, I don't know if I've said that yet, but yeah, it's really nice to have you here.
Yeah, for real.
Well, thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it. Nice to be here.
Yeah, indeed.
Do apologise. I'm a bit tired though. It's I'm 8 hours ahead of you guys. I think it's 2:30 Sunday morning here. So
Oh boy.
yeah.
If you ever need to head out, just say so.
I'm a night owl. You know me, Nee. I work through the night, sleep through the day. So
yeah.
Oh, that's cool. We're good.
Whoa, this is different.
Yeah, the menus in this version are real interesting because they only stick around for a little bit, but Yeah, they're quite different. Also broken, as you can see. You could just like select past the end of the menu.
I actually had a question for Hellfire and Kneesnap, as I don't actually remember if you guys said this, but how old were you guys when you first played Frogger 2?
Oh, I actually don't know the answer to this. I want to say. So I first played Frogger 1 when I was 6, I think.
Oh
Um,
man. That's
The
cool.
first time I played Frogger 2, to be perfectly honest, I think I was 13. And it was only because Frogger 2 was the only Frogger game that, for whatever reason, I didn't play when I was younger. Because I had played all the others except Ancient Shadow, but that was because there was no PC port as far as I knew. But
Mhm.
that ended up being false. But yeah. Yeah, for whatever reason, I just missed the fact that there was a sequel to my favorite game. So eventually I played it later when I realized there was a sequel.
So, Frogger 1 was the first video game I have ever played. And I was probably, I mean, that game came out in 1997, so I was probably like 4. But I remember I went over to my cousin's house and he had Frogger 2. And you know, I was a little kid. I didn't have internet. I didn't have any sort of resources to know that there was a Frogger 2. So I remember it blew my mind to know that there was a sequel to Frogger.
That's about what it was for me. Except
And
I had also played the rest of the Frogger games.
I probably wasn't way older. I probably was more like 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, I probably pestered my parents to get it for me because I really wanted it. And they probably were still selling PS1 games at the store at that time. So, yeah, we went to the store and bought it.
Sort of following on from that, I get the impression that Frogger and Frogger 2 was a lot bigger than it was over in the States than it was over here in Europe. It never really got a massive following in the UK and throughout Europe, to be honest.
It was pretty big here. Like I
Yeah.
still, every time I go into a thrift store and they have a game section, there's a good chance that Frogger is one of the games there. That's
Okay.
it's very widespread. I actually think it was bigger on PC than it was on like PlayStation and such. Yeah, just because like I remember we had it at our after school program. Just had a bunch of games like Frogger and all this other one, but Frogger was always the really popular one.
I think with my parents anyway, I know that they bought Frogger on the PlayStation 1 because they knew of Frogger in the arcade. And they just wanted that same exact. I'm pretty sure that's why a lot of people in the States bought Frogger 1 at least, was because oh my goodness, it's the arcade game and I can play it at home, and then they buy it and then they realize it's a whole 3D game. And I remember my parents would always talk about how like they hated it because they wanted to play the arcade game, and it's just like they instead got this like 3D, and they didn't really understand like, well, oh, where's the street? You know, like they there are the retro levels, and they liked those, and then they'd go down and they'd play like one of the other levels, and they'd be like, what is this? I don't understand how to play this.
Yeah, a lot of people sort of my generation and older, think of Frogger as you say, as that original let's cross the road, cross the river, very flat game. Sort of from the era of Pong and Space Invaders. And then, I can imagine it's quite a shock to load up Frogger 1 and suddenly find that you're in the middle of this 3D realized world. Yeah, it's quite a shock, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think that parental brand recognition is probably why it found its way into my life personally.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, just like my mom or dad, I don't remember who got it for me, but probably was like, oh, it's that old Frogger game I used to play. And then sure enough, I had it. So,
This is my first time.
What about you, Drago? How old were you when you first played these Frogger games?
well, I could tell you closer for Frogger 2 because Frogger 2 did come out in '99, right?
I think it was 2000.
2000. Okay, so it's about like 8 at that point. So, and I want to say that I got it pretty close to the time it came out. So, but probably not like the same year it came out because I don't know how closely my parents were following, like, I don't know, gaming magazines to know exactly when this stuff would come out, or it was just coincidental that they saw it at the store or whatever. But
Yeah.
probably pretty close to that point in time, around when it came out. As for the first game, I know I didn't play it when it first dropped because I think back in '97, I think I was still pretty dang young then. Don't have a whole lot of memories of that, so I probably want to say it would have been at least a year or so after that one came out, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, both of you are at least a couple years older than me here.
Yeah, yeah.
Just noticed a question from Arch there about asking him if you've got any solo or indie game dev experience. Quickly, I'll just answer that. And it's something that I'd like to do, to be honest, but I just don't really have the time, unfortunately. I am obviously enjoying working with the community on Frogger 2 and sort of getting this stuff out there, and it brings back obviously a lot of good memories for me. Hence, I want to be involved. But in terms of solo and indie game development, I just unfortunately don't have time. And I tend to spend. I specialize in 3D graphics programming primarily, and I've been fortunate enough, lucky enough to work with NVIDIA and some of the movie studios on rendering systems that are used for movie effects and whatnot. So a lot of my, I won't say free time, but a lot of the time outside of my normal working day, I'm working on algorithms and rendering, path tracing, ray tracing, real-time ray tracing, that sort of thing, rather than working on games these days. But that said, I do keep current with games technology, just because I find it so fascinating. And at the end of the day, I'm still as much a gamer now, in my mid-40s, as I was when I was 5-6 years old. Still love gaming, and it will always be part of my life.
And that brings me to my question for you, which is, what is your favorite game / game genre of all time?
Oh, oh, crikey! Yeah, that's
I know
that's
it's
a tough
hard.
one. I think my favorite game would probably be on the SNES, Super NES, and that will be Super Mario World.
Hey, that's not a bad choice there.
That is a very good game.
That's I think that had the biggest effect on me at the time. I just got totally engrossed and absorbed by that game. And yeah, I'd say that's probably. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, there's been some fantastic games across various genres, but I put on the spot, I'd say that that's probably my favorite game. Yeah, Super Mario World on the Super NES, on the SNES. Yeah, absolutely loved it. What about you guys out of interest? Got any
Minecraft.
particular favorites? Minecraft.
I've been playing that since it's come out, and it's always just been kind of a development playground for me.
Mhm.
I don't actually play much survival, or I don't really play Minecraft. I more just code
Mhm.
code stuff in it, and but I think that's part of what makes Minecraft so great is that it's a sandbox for people to get whatever experience they want out of it.
Tinker.
Yeah.
It is a very good game for people who like to tinker.
Mhm.
Especially, like, not even including, like, modding it, but, like, in the base game. Like, just having, like, redstone and all that is super
Yeah,
cool.
like you don't even need to code to just like boot up the game, and you can make so much different stuff without ever. Yeah.
My favorite game of all time is Half-Life 2.
Okay, that's a pretty good
Yes.
one too.
Yeah, good
That's pretty
call. Yeah,
solid.
yeah.
Half-Life 2
Yeah.
is a yearly play for me. But if I'm not counting Half-Life 2, I would probably say Half-Life 1. No, I'm joking. I would probably say I really like Spyro 2 and 3 equally. Those are also games that I like to play kind of yearly.
For me, it would be favorite game would probably be Deus Ex.
That's a
But
fantastic choice.
but I didn't actually play it until like 10 years after it was out. And even though it was the 10-year-old game at the time, I still just absolutely loved it.
Mhm.
Played it
I've
through about
heard a
4
lot
or
of
5
good things.
times.
Never played it though, or have any idea what it even is. Do you mind giving me like just a very brief summary of what it is?
Oh, it's a first person what's the term they use is something simulation. It's like kind of like a first person shooter, but it's more of an RPG in ways. So it's not.
Hmm.
So you're not entirely relying on like aiming skill. You have to kind of level that up to be more
Okay.
skilled with weapons, for example. So there's kind of like that skill point building as you progress and kind of build a character throughout the game. And so it's a cyberpunk
I
kind
see.
of conspiracy storyline setting in a kind of dystopian future.
Well, I guess I'll have to check it out then.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, that's definitely on my bucket list of games I gotta play. That and Metal Gear Solid 3. I've never played that either, but that's apparently also
Immersive
really
sim, that's it.
Just noticed that Albert mentioned Thief Dot Project, and yeah, I really that's going back a few years. Absolutely, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed playing through that.
You know what? Interestingly, though, I gotta say, like, maybe not from a objective standpoint, but from a nostalgic standpoint, both Frogger games definitely are also up there for me, for real. Like,
Mhm.
Frogger 1 in particular, and I know that's maybe a little egregious to say considering this is a Frogger 2 centric stream, but Frogger 1 in particular is something that I will also just kind of boot up and play through all the way because it's kind of a short game. So, like, I don't know. I find it a lot of fun to just boot that up and play through it every so often.
Sounds like you don't like to 100% it.
Yeah. No.
We
Big
will
Boulder
talk about
Alley?
that.
Hell no. But yeah.
Oh, I got another question for Andy. I can't remember when you trade off in the game because there's like the story of a kind of like a branching character path, but at what point in development did you guys decide that you wanted to do multiple playable characters?
That was quite an early decision in the game's sort of. Well, yeah, I think that was pretty much from day one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the sort of roster of characters that you see in the final game were pretty much conceptualized day one, and yeah, I think they all made it through. Are there any characters that didn't make it through? Trying to think.
I think there is. There
Is
was one character a while back.
it
I
Ruby? Not Ruby. I can't remember now.
Yeah,
Is it
there was like a kangaroo or something.
Ruby Roo or something. Yeah.
I gotta say,
Not amphibian enough. Was that the problem?
I think, as I said earlier, I don't want to go back over old ground, but with the issues that we had with the story and trying to nail a story for it, we wanted to do a lot more with, with the various characters rather than just having them as playable. We wanted some sort of story plot where their own quests, if you like, would entwine and cross each other. But in the end, it's a shame really that they're just playable characters rather than each having their own backstory.
Yeah.
That it was toyed with, but again, the problem was we didn't really have the time or the size of development team to fit everything in with the pressures that we had against us anyway. So it's a bit of a shame because I think it would have been nice to explore those characters a bit further and introduce some different game mechanics with their different strengths and abilities potentially.
Yeah.
But,
that was something that they wanted to get for Frogger 3. In the concept documents for Frogger 3, they have a whole bunch of other characters that they tried to explore. Of course, that turned into Zapper, and that didn't end up being a Frogger game. But yeah, I have a question. I'm pretty sure I've asked this before, but there's a very weird Easter egg in Frogger 2, specifically the PC version, where if you create a certain folder path with a certain file name, then it will change the croaking noise, and and it was added just the day before the first master was created for the PC version, and we it would be very nice to have some kind of idea of what the heck it was supposed to mean.
Are you referring to the Kevin Mullard?
Yes, I am.
I've got to hold my hands up here. I know nothing.
Yeah, figured.
I honestly, I don't actually know. I don't even know who put that in. To be honest,
think it was.
I really don't.
If I recall the commit, because we have the source history now, we can check.
Yeah.
I think it was James Hubbard or Jim Hubbard. I don't know.
Jim Hubbard. Okay. Yeah, James. Yeah, Jim Hubbard. Yeah. Interesting. I never realized that.
Can you elaborate? Like, what is this that you are referring to?
Okay.
Go for it, Nate.
So if you create a folder path M, and then inside that folder you have a folder called U. Inside that folder LLARD. So Mullard. And then if in that last folder where you have it's called the folder called D, the last folder. If you create an empty file called is_my_daddy.txt, so it spells out Mullard is my daddy.txt, it will change the Frogger's croaking sound from a normal croak to something I don't even know how to put into words.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
yeah, I don't even know how I describe it. And and it's so random. There is no explanation for it really right now, and it is something I am desperately curious about.
I need to ask Jim actually, because
Oh, do you have contact with
terms-
Jim?
I haven't spoken to him for a few years, but yeah, I think I've still got his contact details somewhere. And
Whoa, answers.
whether or not he replies, I can ask him. But I find it quite funny because of all the people that were on the development team, he was probably the most sort of by the book, strict, very quite a serious sort of guy. He did have a bit of a wicked sense of humour now and again. Well, a dry sense of humour, but yeah, he was very by the book. So I'm quite surprised that he's responsible for doing that, and I'm curious. I want to know why. I want to know why.
Yeah.
I'll try and find out.
And I'm curious because this sound effect that was created wasn't like some random sound effect that came from like the internet or something. It's something that was made by the team because it has like the metadata of like getting exported by the audio tools the team used. So so it either they had a sound guy help on this, or it was or maybe even Jim himself like figured out how to use audio tools like and made this specifically for this. This took effort to make. This wasn't just like something that took like 30 seconds of time. They had to use sound as well. There was both development in terms of code and sound. So I'm very interested.
Yeah, there's a small in-house sound bank tool that we could use for packaging up the various sound sets once they've been created, and then you could specify the frequency, the playback rates, the quality.
Yeah, I'm not even
and then-
talking about that though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like the actual .wav file, because we have both the files that got put into that file format from the tool, but also just the raw kind of just wave files that are just sitting
okay.
there. That's what had the metadata of like it was.
Right.
I think it was Steinberg Cubase that it has the tag from, but I could be wrong.
Can you?
Yeah.
Could you potentially before? Because I'm gonna be going to bed in probably 6 minutes and wrap this stream up.
We're gonna have to hear the sound effect.
Yeah, we got to hear it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't.
Right,
we can't
right.
not hear it.
Let's.
You can't just talk about it all this time and then not.
Sure. What would be the easiest?
Is it just like a wave file or something?
Yeah, I'll just go grab the wave file.
And this is a sound that's in the PC version, right? Like this is in the. So like if you were to pop in a CD-ROM of the PC version and install it and then extract contents from it, you'd be able to find this sound.
Yeah, well, the PC version can play it, so so it's got to be there. Yeah. Let me just push it right here.
Okay, I need to Okay, hold on. I need to find a way to make sure this plays on stream here.
Arch asks if it could have been a commit under his name by somebody else. In theory, it could have been, but he was he was actively making a lot of commits that day, and there wasn't a whole lot of other people making commits. So, I think it was him.
If you play it in Discord, like in the little player.
Oh yeah, it'll stream it through.
It's already streaming Discord.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, here goes nothing. Okay.
Yeah, see what I mean? It's kind of indescribable.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's mullered.
I don't know if any of you guys have ever played Age of Empires, but it kind of reminds me of the priest conversion sound a little bit. Well, I guess it's the Frogger version of that.
Yeah.
It probably is even more funny in the context of the game when you're playing it.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's a really weird sound because it and you have the visuals to go around it too, like Frogger with his eyes bulging, like when you normally croak. and the ring that goes outward from Frogger. It's a very strange Easter egg.
I'm surprised that nobody found that until you just mentioned it, because I don't
Yeah.
believe anybody ever found that.
I found that several years ago. I think it was 2020. I found it when I was just using Process Explorer to just see what files it was loading, to see like which levels were used, which ones weren't. Like when I loaded a level, I wanted to know which actual files on the disk were loaded by the game, and I noticed that it was also checking for the existence of a very strange text file, and so I created it to see what happened, and I just tried to just see what happened in game, and eventually I figured out that it was croaking.
That's
changed.
so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah, we did some strange things back in those days. I think some of my dev logs might be a little bit strange as well. Hopefully they've been redacted.
Hey, you said I shouldn't redact them.
No, I don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. In Andy's defense, he says the specific interesting one for those who have seen it is was not written by him.
Oh yeah, the artwork one.
Yeah, the artwork one.
Yeah, I didn't do that actually. Someone pasted that in. I wonder if Jim did that as well.
By the books. That's really interesting. What's going on there? That log platforms are just like falling.
Yeah,
when they reach the end.
It's reminding me of Frogger 1, earlier versions where like there'd be things in the water and they just kind of, yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the levels where it scared me a little bit as a child to play.
The ghosts that chase you, that's haunting.
Frogger the Great Quest was always the scariest Frogger game for me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that completely.
This the level with the feet and the hands, is it? Yeah, there's the feet.
Oh,
around. There we go.
I had the bloody axes.
Oh yeah.
There's no death animation yet.
Yeah, I think that was one of the areas where it would trigger the sliced in half frog, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just realizing now that the baby frogs do not have heads. It's just a pair of legs with a tail. All right, folks. I think that I might want to say that I'm going to call the stream for tonight. Get some sleep. I'm very exhausted.
All right.
This has been wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And we should do this again soon. Play some more of these builds.
How many builds we got left?
I mean, it's not even just a matter of the builds, but like, there's a lot we gotta like look through.
Oh yeah,
or
there's
talk
all
about.
the unused content. We should look through some like the levels, like actually open up Job and like look at the 3D models of levels, and even here I've only shared the PlayStation prototypes because the PC ones have some compatibility question marks that we probably want to sort out before we were to start streaming. And there's a lot that we could look over, like the spherical worlds, just early level renders, concept art, just everything from development should be like pretty much everything is in this release. So there should be no shortage of stuff to talk about.
So we have probably there's 14 more playable builds, but
that's just PlayStation.
That's just on PlayStation, and that's also excluding the fact that, you know, essentially we could build other versions and mess with the source code, and there's a lot to look at. So
CS188 is here.
Oh wow.
Oh hey.
ICS 188. So I will leave the stream VOD up if you guys would like to tune back in and continue watching after. You're just probably gonna have to go to my profile and go to the streams tab, because otherwise you're just gonna be met with a bunch of weird content that has nothing to do with Frogger. Anyway, this has been fantastic, you guys. And I'm going to go to bed.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks.
Yeah, good night.
Thank
And
you,
thanks for
everyone
the
here.
invite. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.